On a sunny afternoon in downtown Chicago, the city was alive with the buzz of activity. Luxury cars glided past the shimmering storefronts, and the laughter of affluent patrons filled the air as they enjoyed their lattes in trendy cafes. In stark contrast to this bustling scene sat Marcus, a black man in his mid-40s, wearing a worn-out jacket that had seen better days. His scruffy beard and tired eyes told a story of hardship, but his presence commanded respect. There was a wisdom about him that stemmed from years of life experience. Marcus was no stranger to the streets. He had been homeless for 3 years, forced out of a life that once promised him everything. As he leaned against the cool stone of a building, he watched people pass by, lost in their worlds, unaware of the battles fought in silence. On the other side of town, Amelia Carter, a wealthy entrepreneur known for her charitable work, was having a rough day. Her latest venture, a tech startup aimed at helping underprivileged youth, was struggling to gain traction. Despite her best efforts, the business was on the verge of collapse, and with it, her dreams of making a difference. Frustrated and exhausted, she decided to take a break from her office and headed out for a stroll, hoping to clear her mind. As fate would have it, Amelia's path crossed with Marcus's when she spotted him sitting outside a bustling cafe. Something about his demeanor drew her in. Perhaps it was the calmness in his eyes or the quiet strength he exuded. After a moment's hesitation, she approached him. "Excuse me," she said gently, her voice breaking through the haze of his thoughts. "I know this might sound strange, but would you like something to eat?" Marcus looked up, surprised by the unexpected kindness. "I appreciate the offer, ma'am, but I'm not hungry," he replied, his voice deep and gravelly. "I'm just thinking." Amelia sat down beside him, intrigued. "Thinking about what?" He hesitated, glancing around at the people enjoying their lives. "Life, I guess. How easy it is to lose everything." Amelia's heart ached at his words. She could see the pain etched into his features, a stark reminder of the harsh realities that existed just beneath the surface of her privileged world. After a few moments of silence, Amelia found herself wanting to know more. "What's your name?" "Marcus," he replied, offering a small smile. "And you?" "Amelia. It's nice to meet you, Marcus." She paused, contemplating her next words. "I run a tech startup aimed at helping people like you. We provide resources and training for those who want to turn their lives around. Have you ever considered working in tech?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Tech? Me?" He chuckled softly, but there was a glimmer of interest in his eyes. "Absolutely. It's never too late to learn something new. I could use someone with your life experience. You have a unique perspective that could help shape our mission." Surprised by her enthusiasm, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. "What kind of work are you talking about?" "Anything from outreach to project management. We could start with training to see where your strengths lie," Amelia explained, her excitement palpable. "And I'd be happy to help you get back on your feet." Marcus's heart raced. He hadn't thought about working in years, much less in a field like tech. "I don't know if I'm qualified," he said, doubt creeping into his voice. "Qualifications can be learned. Passion is what matters. If you're willing to give it a shot, I'll support you," she insisted. After a moment of contemplation, Marcus nodded slowly. "All right, I'll give it a try. What do I have to lose?" Amelia beamed, and for the first time in a long while, Marcus felt a sense of purpose rekindling within him. Over the next few weeks, Amelia and Marcus met regularly. She introduced him to the world of technology, showing him the ins and outs of her startup. To her surprise, Marcus was a quick learner. His analytical mind, honed from years of navigating life's challenges, proved to be an asset. He had a natural gift for understanding complex systems, and Amelia could see the spark of confidence growing in him. As they worked together, Marcus opened up about his past. He had once been a successful software engineer, living in a modest but comfortable apartment with a steady job and plans for the future. But a series of unfortunate events, a sudden illness, the loss of a loved one, and a failing marriage, had spiraled him into homelessness. Each day on the streets had chipped away at his self-worth, making it hard for him to believe he could ever reclaim his life. Amelia listened intently, her heart breaking for him. You've already shown resilience by surviving, she said encouragingly. You can rebuild. Just remember, everyone has a story. Yours is powerful. As they collaborated, Amelia began to realize that Marcus was not just a project. He was becoming a friend. Their shared moments were filled with laughter and inspiration, a bond formed from understanding and shared struggles. Months passed, and Marcus was ready for his first official role at the startup. With Amelia's guidance, he had developed a training program aimed at helping homeless individuals gain digital skills. The day of the presentation arrived, and he stood nervously in front of a room full of potential investors. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. "My name is Marcus, and I'm here to talk about opportunity. My life took a turn that led me to experience homelessness, but what I learned is that every person has the potential to contribute meaningfully to society." As he spoke, he shared stories of his struggles, the lessons he learned, and the importance of empathy. He detailed the program he had developed, how it would provide the tools and resources needed to empower those in similar situations. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Amelia beamed with pride as she watched him flourish. She knew that this moment marked a significant turning point, not just for Marcus, but for her startup as well. As the meeting concluded, a well-dressed man approached them. "Impressive presentation, Marcus. I think you have a bright future ahead," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you," Marcus replied, shaking his hand with a newfound confidence. Just as they were about to leave, a commotion at the back of the room caught their attention. A familiar voice rang out, echoing through the space. "Marcus, is that you?" Everyone turned to see a woman in her 40s, her face pale and filled with disbelief. It was Sarah, Marcus's ex-wife. The last time he had seen her was on the day he left everything behind. She had moved on, or so he thought. "Sarah," he whispered, his heart racing. "What are you doing here?" "I was invited by a friend. I had no idea." She trailed off, her eyes scanning the room before landing on Amelia. "You're working with him?" "Sarah, please," Marcus said, raising his hands. "Let's talk privately." The two stepped aside, the tension palpable. "I didn't know you were in Chicago. Why didn't you reach out?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "I didn't want to drag you back into my mess," he replied, emotion choking his words. "I'm trying to get back on my feet." "You look different. You're doing well," she said, her eyes softening. "I'm trying. Amelia has been a huge help," he admitted, gesturing toward her. Sarah's gaze shifted to Amelia, and recognition dawned. "You're the one who started that tech program. I've heard of you. You're doing great work." Amelia smiled, but the atmosphere felt charged with unspoken emotions. "Thank you. We're all just trying to make a difference," she replied, unsure of how much to share. "Marcus, I need to tell you something," Sarah said, her voice steadying. "I've missed you. I've thought about you every day. I didn't realize how hard things were for you until I saw your name in the news. They wrote an article about your startup." Marcus felt a mix of emotions, anger, regret, and longing. "It's too late for us," he said softly. "I can't go back to that life." "But can we start over as friends? I want to support you," she pleaded. Marcus considered her words, knowing the road ahead would be complex. "I don't know, Sarah. I need time." Amelia watched the exchange, her heart heavy with the weight of their shared history. "Maybe it's time to embrace the future, Marcus," she said gently. As the days turned into weeks, Marcus's relationship with Sarah began to heal. They met regularly, talking through their past and the pain they both endured. While they knew they could never go back to what they once had, they found solace in shared experiences and a newfound understanding. With every meeting, Marcus felt a blend of hope and apprehension. Sarah's presence stirred old memories, both good and bad. He often wondered if rekindling their friendship was a step forward or a backward glance at a life he was trying to leave behind. However, as the conversations deepened, he realized that this was not just about the past, but also about healing and growth. At the same time, his work with Amelia was blossoming. The training program was gaining traction, and they received funding from local investors intrigued by the impact it could make. Marcus was excited to expand the initiative and help others in similar situations as he had faced. With Amelia's support, he organized workshops and outreach events, connecting with various homeless shelters and community organizations. Their first major event was set for the upcoming month, an open house showcasing the success stories of those who had benefited from the program. As Marcus prepared for the presentation, he felt a mix of nerves and exhilaration. This was his chance not just to highlight the program's impact, but also to reclaim his identity as someone who could help others. Meanwhile, Amelia worked tirelessly behind the scenes, ensuring everything was in place. She had become more than just a mentor. She was now a partner in Marcus's journey. As the day of the open house approached, she noticed the change in him. His demeanor was more confident, and his laughter came more easily. The spark that had once seemed dim now burned bright. The day of the open house arrived, and the venue buzzed with excitement. Attendees included potential donors, community leaders, and individuals looking for inspiration. The atmosphere was electric, filled with hope and possibility. As Marcus stood at the front of the room, he looked out at the crowd, feeling both proud and humbled. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice steady. "This program is not just about teaching skills, it's about restoring dignity and offering a path forward. Each of us has a story, and I want to share mine." As he spoke, he recounted his journey, from success to hardship, and ultimately to hope. He spoke candidly about the dark days of living on the streets, the struggles that had led him there, and the resilience he discovered within himself. He shared stories of others he had met during his time in the program, showcasing their triumphs and transformations. Amelia watched with pride as Marcus commanded the room, his passion igniting a fire within the hearts of everyone present. By the end of his presentation, the audience was captivated. People began to raise their hands, eager to offer support, financial contributions, volunteer time, and resources. After the formalities concluded, attendees mingled and shared their thoughts. A woman approached Marcus, tears in her eyes. "Your story touched me deeply. My brother has struggled with homelessness for years. I want to help in any way I can." As conversations flowed, Marcus felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. For the first time in years, he was no longer just surviving, he was thriving. After the event, Sarah approached him. "You were amazing today. I'm so proud of you," she said, her voice genuine. "Thanks, Sarah. I couldn't have done it without Amelia's support," he replied, glancing at Amelia, who was busy speaking with a group of attendees. As they moved to a quieter corner, Sarah continued, "I know our past is complicated, but I want to be part of your journey. Can we work together? I have contacts in nonprofit sectors that could benefit the program." Marcus was taken aback. "You really want to help? After everything?" I've realized how much I took for granted when we were together. I want to support you now, not just as your ex-wife, but as a friend," she replied earnestly. Marcus pondered her offer. It was an unexpected twist, but he sensed a genuine desire to make amends. "If you're serious about this, I'd welcome the help. Let's see where it goes." As they collaborated, the dynamic between them shifted. They began to form a professional partnership rooted in mutual respect and understanding. Sarah introduced Marcus to various organizations that aligned with their mission, expanding their reach and impact. With Sarah's connections, the training program grew rapidly. They secured more funding, allowing them to hire additional trainers and expand their curriculum. Marcus found himself immersed in work that brought him fulfillment, but it wasn't without challenges. As the program gained notoriety, critics emerged. Some questioned the effectiveness of their approach, while others voiced skepticism about the potential for change. Amelia and Marcus were determined to address these challenges head-on. They organized community forums, inviting critics to discuss their concerns openly. During one such forum, a prominent local journalist challenged Marcus. "You speak of transformation, but what makes you think those who've fallen on hard times can truly change?" Marcus took a deep breath, recalling his journey. "I am living proof that change is possible. I was once lost, but I found my way back. It's not just about skills, it's about belief. When you invest in people, you empower them to see their worth." The room fell silent as Marcus's words resonated with many. His authenticity and determination shifted the conversation, slowly winning over skeptics. Months turned into a year, and the program flourished. Marcus had become a well-respected figure in the community, speaking at events and sharing his story to inspire others. He and Amelia had forged a strong partnership, driven by a shared vision of creating lasting change. As the program thrived, Amelia and Marcus often reflected on their journeys, their paths intertwined by fate, leading them to this moment. One afternoon, as they sat in the office after a successful event, Marcus turned to Amelia. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Amelia smiled, her eyes glimmering. "You did the hard work, Marcus. I just provided the platform. Your resilience is what makes this program a success." As they spoke, Sarah entered the room, her expression bright. "Great news! We just received a grant from a major foundation to expand our outreach program." Marcus felt a rush of gratitude. "That's incredible. We can help so many more people." "Together, we're building something special," Sarah added, her tone sincere. The three of them stood united, looking out at the future filled with possibilities. A year later, they organized a community celebration to mark the success of their initiative. Former participants shared their stories of transformation, how they had found jobs, restored relationships, and gained self-worth. Amelia took the stage, her heart swelling with pride. This program isn't just about skills, it's about community, support, and love. Together, we're changing lives. As Marcus stepped up to share his journey once more, he couldn't help but glance at Sarah and Amelia, who stood in support. They had become allies in his quest for redemption, proving that even the darkest paths could lead to unexpected partnerships and hope. "Life can be unforgiving," he began, "but it can also be beautiful if we allow ourselves to grow and heal. Thank you for believing in me, and thank you for believing in each other." The audience erupted in applause, and tears filled his eyes. In that moment, he realized he was no longer the homeless man he once was. He was a beacon of hope, a testament to resilience, and a catalyst for change. As the celebration concluded, Amelia, Marcus, and Sarah stood together, surveying the crowd of inspired individuals. Each face represented a story of struggle and triumph, a reminder of why they had embarked on this journey together. "What's next?" Sarah asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Marcus smiled. "We keep going. There are still so many people who need help, and we're just getting started." Amelia nodded. "Let's continue to push boundaries and make a difference. Together." As they walked away from the stage, hand in hand, they felt the weight of the past lift. The future was bright, filled with potential, and their partnership was a testament to the power of compassion and understanding. In that moment, they knew that no matter where life took them, they would face it together, united by their shared vision of hope and healing. The gleaming sun was dipping beneath the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over the streets of downtown. Mr. William Grant, dressed in an immaculate tailored suit, strode confidently out of La Maison, Zrania, a high-end restaurant known for catering to the city's elite. The valet handed him his car keys, and with a subtle nod, William eased into his silver luxury sedan. As he settled into the leather seat, adjusting the rearview mirror, a woman's voice called from the sidewalk. "Excuse me, sir. Can you help me, please?" He frowned, rolling his eyes before glancing out of the window. Standing on the curb was a slender black woman, perhaps in her early 30s, dressed in a simple blouse and slacks. Her face was composed, but there was a hint of desperation in her eyes. "My car broke down a few blocks from here," she said. "I just need a lift to the next service station or a call for a tow." William quickly scanned her up and down. To him, she didn't look like she belonged anywhere near La Maison. He imagined she was just another one of those people looking for a handout, an excuse to guilt him into helping her. He had seen it before. There was no way he was getting involved in someone else's problems tonight, not when he had his own to deal with. "Look," he said, without even a flicker of sympathy in his voice, "why don't you figure it out yourself? People like you always find a way." The woman's expression tightened, but she didn't argue. She simply nodded, almost as if she had expected the response. "Thank you for your time," she replied quietly, turning away and walking toward the street corner. William rolled his eyes again, muttering under his breath, Some people just don't know when to stop asking for help. He started his car and drove off without a second thought, not realizing that the woman he'd just dismissed would soon turn his world upside down. The next morning, William was back in his plush corner office at Grant & Co., his multi-million-dollar investment firm that dealt exclusively with high-profile clients. Today was important, critical even. He had been working for months on securing a partnership with Green Tech Inc., a booming environmental tech company that had been making headlines for its innovation in renewable energy. William had yet to meet the new CEO of Green Tech, but word on the street was that this person had taken the company to unprecedented heights in just 2 years. If he could land this deal, it would be one of the biggest milestones in his career. His assistant, Rachel, knocked lightly on his office door. "Mr. Grant, the CEO of Green Tech, is scheduled to be here in 30 minutes. William nodded, glancing over the proposal documents on his desk. He was confident. He always was. No one could say no to him when it came to business. He had a reputation for making deals others couldn't dream of. "Make sure the boardroom's ready," he said without looking up. "I want everything to be perfect." Rachel nodded and disappeared down the hallway. As the clock ticked closer to the meeting, William went over his pitch in his head. He knew this deal would secure his firm's future for years to come. He had even brought in his top advisors to ensure they impressed the CEO. Little did he know, he was in for a shock. The time arrived. William stood at the head of the large glass conference table, his advisors seated around him. There was a quiet confidence in the air, the kind that comes from years of success. The door opened and Rachel stepped in. "Mr. Grant, the CEO of Green Tech is here." "Perfect. Send them in." William straightened his jacket, expecting to meet an older, experienced businessman, someone he could relate to. Instead, when the CEO walked in, his confidence shattered. It was her, the woman he had dismissed on the street the night before. She walked in with an air of quiet authority, her sharp suit and composed demeanor commanding the room's attention. She wasn't the stranded woman in simple clothes anymore. She was someone else entirely, someone powerful. And in that moment, William's world tilted. Her eyes locked on his, and though her face remained professional, there was no mistaking the recognition in her gaze. She knew exactly who he was, and she wasn't about to let him forget it. "Good morning, Mr. Grant," she said coolly, extending her hand. "I'm Maya Cole, CEO of Green Tech." For a moment, William just stared at her, his mind scrambling to process what was happening. He managed to shake her hand, though his grip felt limp compared to her firm, confident clasp. Ms. Cole," he stammered, "it's a pleasure." The room seemed to buzz with tension. His advisors were oblivious to the undercurrent between the two of them, but Maya's calm smile held a hidden power that made William nervous. She took a seat at the table, setting her folder down, completely unfazed by the heavy silence that followed her introduction. William had always been good at talking his way out of uncomfortable situations, but today was different. As he launched into his well-rehearsed pitch, outlining the potential benefits of their partnership, Maya listened silently, her face unreadable. Her silence unnerved him. Every time he glanced her way, he saw not just a CEO, but the woman he had dismissed so easily, so cruelly. The woman he had assumed was beneath him. Halfway through his pitch, he faltered. His confidence, so ingrained in him, began to crumble. He could see it now, how wrong he had been, how he had let his assumptions cloud his judgment. He could almost feel her judgment weighing on him, though she remained perfectly composed. Finally, he finished. The room was dead silent as Maya leaned back in her chair, considering him for a long moment before speaking. "Mr. Grant," she said, her voice steady, "I appreciate the work you and your team have put into this proposal. Green Tech is indeed interested in a partnership." William felt a wave of relief wash over him, but it was premature. "However," Maya continued, "I've come to learn that business at its core is about people. It's about how we treat others, regardless of their station in life, or what we think we know about them." She held his gaze firmly, and William felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "Last night, I found myself in a situation where I needed help," she said, "and you, Mr. Grant, were there. You had an opportunity to help a fellow human being. But instead, you chose to dismiss me." The silence in the room was deafening. William felt his face flush with shame. His advisors exchanged confused glances, not fully understanding what was happening, but the weight of Maya's words hung heavy in the air. "I don't hold grudges," Maya said, her tone still calm, but now edged with steel. "But I do make decisions based on character, and I'm not sure I can trust someone who looks down on others to lead with integrity." William swallowed hard, his mind racing. For the first time in years, he was at a loss for words. He had been so sure of himself, so sure that his wealth and status had granted him a certain immunity to accountability. But now, sitting across from the woman he had dismissed as insignificant, he realized just how wrong he had been. "Ms. Cole," he began, his voice strained, "I deeply regret what happened last night. It was a mistake, and I'm sincerely sorry." Maya didn't respond immediately. Instead, she regarded him for a long, uncomfortable moment. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but unyielding. "Thank you for your apology, Mr. Grant, but apologies don't erase actions. They don't change the fact that you showed me who you are when you thought no one was watching." Her words hit him harder than he expected. He had always prided himself on being a man of power and influence, but now he saw that none of that mattered in the face of true integrity. Maya stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "I'll consider your proposal, but know that GreenTech values more than just financial gain. We value character, vision, and respect." With that, she turned and left the room, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor, leaving William and his team in stunned silence. For the next few days, William couldn't shake the meeting from his mind. It was more than just a business deal slipping through his fingers. It was the realization that everything he had built his life on, wealth, power, success, meant nothing without the human decency that should have come with it. Maya's words echoed in his thoughts, reminding him that respect and kindness were worth more than the superficial value he had always placed on people's appearances. A week later, he received an email from GreenTech. It wasn't a rejection, but it wasn't an acceptance either. Maya had agreed to reconsider the proposal, but with one condition, that the partnership would be handled by someone else at Grant & Co. William knew why. He wasn't fit to lead the deal, not after what had happened. It was a harsh but fair outcome. A week later, William received an email from the GreenTech. The message wasn't the outright rejection he had feared, but it was far from the victory he had expected. Maya had agreed to reconsider the proposal, but with one critical condition. The partnership could only proceed if another executive from the Grant & Coers managed the deal. William stared at the screen, the words blurring before his eyes. It was a subtle but undeniable dismissal, a reflection of Maya's judgment of his character. She had essentially stripped him of his leadership in the deal, recognizing his company's potential, but not trusting him personally to represent it. He leaned back in his chair, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. It wasn't just about losing a deal. It was about losing the respect he had once taken for granted. For the first time in his life, William felt something he hadn't experienced in years: humility. Days turned into weeks, and William found himself reflecting more and more on the encounter with Maya. He had always seen himself as a powerful figure, someone who controlled his destiny through hard work and sharp business acumen. But Maya's unexpected presence in his life had revealed a blind spot he hadn't even known existed. He began to notice the subtle ways in which he had distanced himself from people, how he had insulated himself in a world of privilege, never really stopping to consider how his actions affected others. His quick dismissal of Maya that night wasn't an isolated incident. It was symptomatic of a deeper flaw in his character. One evening, long after the office had emptied, William found himself in the conference room, staring at the proposal for the GreenTech partnership. It was still sitting on the table where he had left it after the fateful meeting. But now, as he looked at the stack of papers, he saw something else. He saw an opportunity, not to salvage the deal, but to change himself. With a sudden clarity, he realized that the deal didn't matter as much as what it had taught him. For the first time in a long time, William felt a pull to do something more meaningful with his life. 3 months later, William walked into a community center on the south side of the city. It was an unfamiliar place for him, a world away from the high-rise buildings and corporate boardrooms he frequented. The building was buzzing with activity, filled with volunteers, children, and families. It was a space dedicated to supporting low-income families, an initiative led by none other than the Maya Cole. William had heard about the center through one of his colleagues. Maya had started the initiative years before she became the CEO of the Green Tech, but its mission had expanded as her success grew. She had poured her resources into the community, giving back in ways William had never considered. He didn't make an appointment. He simply showed up, unsure if Maya would even want to see him. As he walked through the hallways of the center, watching the volunteers work with children and families, William felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Finally, he found Maya in one of the classrooms, talking to a group of kids about the importance of environmental sustainability. She was as composed and authoritative as ever, but there was a warmth to her that William hadn't fully appreciated before. When she noticed him standing in the doorway, her eyes widened slightly in surprise, but her expression remained neutral. "Mr. Grant," she said, her tone even. "I didn't expect to see you here." William nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. "I know I didn't handle things well the last time we met," he began. "I've had a lot of time to think since then, and I wanted to apologize again, not just for that night, but for the way I've lived my life. I've made a lot of assumptions about people. I've let my success blind me to what really matters." Maya studied him for a long moment, and for the first time since their encounter, William felt truly vulnerable. He wasn't the powerful businessman in the boardroom anymore. He was just a man, standing in front of someone he had wronged, hoping for a chance to make things right. "You didn't have to come here," Maya said, her voice softening. "I know," William replied, "but I wanted to. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about character and how we treat people. I want to change that about myself." Maya's expression softened further, and she nodded. "I believe people can change, Mr. Grant. It's not about where we start. It's about where we choose to go. But real change takes more than words. It takes action." William nodded. "That's why I'm here. I want to help, not with money, at least not only with money. I want to volunteer. I want to learn what it means to give back, the way you do." For a moment, Maya didn't speak. She simply regarded him with a mixture of surprise and consideration. Finally, she nodded. "We always need more hands," she said. "You're welcome to join us." From that day forward, William became a regular at the community center. He volunteered every week, working side by side with Maya and the other volunteers. It wasn't easy at first. He struggled to connect with the people there, especially after years of living in a world where wealth and success defined everything. But gradually, things began to change. He started listening more, learning from the people he had once dismissed. He built relationships with the families at the center, realizing that true success wasn't measured by bank accounts or corporate deals, but by the impact one had on others. Maya watched him grow over the months, never coddling him, but always offering guidance when he needed it. They never spoke about that night outside de la maison again, but the lessons of that encounter lingered between them, shaping the way William approached his new life. 6 months later, William stood in front of a group of volunteers, giving a speech about the importance of service and community. He was no longer the arrogant man who had once turned away from someone in need. He had become someone different, someone who understood the value of humility, kindness, and respect. Maya stood in the back of the room, listening quietly. When William finished his speech, their eyes met, and she gave him a small nod of approval. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was enough. It was her way of acknowledging the change she had seen in him. As the crowd dispersed, William approached her. "I just want to thank you," he said, his voice sincere. "You changed my life, Maya. Not just by what you said that day, but by showing me what real leadership looks like." Maya smiled. "You changed your life, William. All I did was give you the opportunity." For the first time in his life, William understood what it meant to be truly successful, not in business, but in the way he lived his life. And as he walked out of the community center that day, he knew that the man who had once dismissed Maya was gone. In his place was someone better, someone who had learned that the most important investment he could ever make was in the people around him. Aaliyah Clark was a girl who never asked for attention. Quiet, smart, and observant, she glided through the halls of St. Mary's Middle School unnoticed by most of her peers. It wasn't that she wanted to be invisible, but the feeling of being different seemed to follow her like a shadow. At 13, Aaliyah had already learned that being a black girl in a predominantly white school came with challenges. She had been taught at home to be proud of her heritage, to wear her natural curls like a crown, and to embrace her darker skin with confidence. But middle school was a battlefield, and no amount of preparation could truly protect her from the unspoken, and sometimes spoken, cruelties of her classmates. Little did they know, Aaliyah was harboring a secret so powerful that when revealed, it would turn the entire school on its head. It started small, as these things often do. A few sneers in the hallways, snide remarks whispered just loud enough for Aaliyah to hear. The kind of casual cruelty that kids think doesn't matter, but cuts deep. It was Lily Anderson, who led the charge. Blonde, popular, and known for her sharp tongue, Lily's words could leave invisible scars. At first, Aaliyah tried to ignore it. After all, her father always told her to choose her battles wisely. "Keep your head up, baby girl," he would say. "Not every fight deserves your energy." She clung to his advice as she brushed past the insults, pretending not to hear the giggles that followed her down the hallway. But Lily wasn't one to be ignored. One day, it escalated. Aaliyah was sitting in math class when she felt a cold splash of water hit the back of her head. She froze, her fingers tightening around her pencil as she heard Lily's mocking voice from behind her. "Oops, my bad," Lily snickered, her voice dripping with insincerity. The classroom erupted in laughter. Aaliyah's curls, which her mother had spent time carefully styling that morning, now dripped with water. She could feel the weight of the stares, the pity from some, and the glee from others. Her cheeks burned with shame. But still, she didn't say anything. She kept her eyes on the board, pretending like nothing had happened. But inside, something was shifting. Something was breaking. The cafeteria was always the worst. It was a stage where the invisible lines of popularity, power, and race were drawn. Aaliyah usually sat alone, not because she didn't have friends, but because even her closest friend, Maya, sometimes found it easier to blend into the background than sit with her in the spotlight of Lily's ridicule. On this particular day, Aaliyah had just sat down with her lunch when she noticed Lily and her crew approaching. Her stomach tightened. They rarely bothered her in the cafeteria. Too public, too many witnesses. But something was different today. "Hey, Aaliyah," Lily called out, her voice carrying across the room. "Mind if we sit?" Aaliyah didn't answer. She knew better than to engage, but before she could react, Lily's group had already surrounded her table. Lily leaned in close, her voice low but venomous. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Always acting like you're better than everyone else." Aaliyah blinked. "I've never—" But before she could finish her sentence, Lily reached out and slapped the sandwich from Aaliyah's hand, sending it flying to the floor. The cafeteria went silent. Lily stood up straight, her eyes cold. "You don't belong here," she sneered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're nothing." The words hit Aaliyah like a punch to the gut. For a moment, she just sat there, staring at her food scattered across the floor. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps as she felt every eye in the room on her, waiting. Something inside her snapped. Aaliyah stood slowly, her knees shaking, but her mind clearer than it had been in weeks. She looked around the cafeteria, at all the faces staring back at her, waiting for her to break down, to run away in tears. But she didn't. Instead, she looked Lily straight in the eye. "You think you can say whatever you want, because no one will stand up to you," Aaliyah said, her voice trembling with emotion. "But I'm done being silent." Lily blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "What are you talking about?" Aaliyah's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "You don't know anything about me. You don't know who I am or what I'm capable of." There was a ripple of murmurs through the cafeteria. A few students leaned in closer, intrigued. Lily crossed her arms, her smirk returning. "Oh, really? And what makes you so special?" Aaliyah took a deep breath. She had never wanted to play this card. She didn't want to be the girl who got special treatment because of who her father was. But this had gone too far. "My father," Aaliyah said, her voice growing stronger, is, Malcolm Clark. The name hung in the air, heavy with weight. Several students gasped. Even Lily's smirk faltered for a moment. Malcolm Clark, the civil rights lawyer who had been on the news just a few weeks ago for winning a landmark case against a major corporation for racial discrimination. He was a man known for standing up against injustice, for fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. Aaliyah looked around the room, her heart racing. Yeah, that's right. The same Malcolm Clark who's coming here tomorrow to give a speech about bullying and equality. The same man who's been working with the school for weeks to investigate the bullying that's been happening here. She took a step toward Lily, her voice unwavering. And guess what? He's coming here. Because of me. Because I told him what's been happening. Because I've been dealing with people like you. Lily's face turned pale. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I didn't say anything for so long because I didn't want to cause trouble, Aaliyah continued. But now, I'm done staying quiet. You're not going to push me around anymore. The cafeteria was dead silent. No one moved. No one spoke. They just stared at Aaliyah, wide-eyed and shocked. Lily stumbled back, her confidence shattered. Her group, once so eager to follow her lead, now seemed to shrink away, avoiding her gaze. You think this changes anything? Lily stammered, but her voice lacked the venom it once held. So, what if your dad's some big-shot lawyer? I'm still what? Aaliyah interrupted, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. Still black? Still different? You're right. I am, and I'm proud of it. Lily's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Aaliyah didn't wait for her to respond. She turned and walked away, her head held high, leaving Lily and the stunned crowd in her wake. She could feel the eyes on her, but this time, it didn't bother her. This time, she felt powerful. As Aaliyah left the cafeteria, Maya rushed up to her, her face a mixture of shock and awe. Aaliyah, I can't believe you just did that. Aaliyah smiled, though her heart was still racing. I can't believe it either, she admitted, but I'm done letting people like her push me around. Maya grinned. I'm so proud of you. The next day, the entire school gathered in the auditorium for the long-awaited assembly. There was a buzz of anticipation in the air. Everyone had heard about what happened in the cafeteria. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. When Aaliyah walked in, the whispers started. People pointed, stared, but this time it wasn't out of ridicule. This time, it was out of respect. She found a seat near the front, her heart pounding in her chest as the lights dimmed and her father took the stage. Malcolm Clark was a commanding presence, tall and confident, with a voice that could fill any room. He began his speech, talking about the importance of standing up against bullying, about the power of speaking out against injustice. But then, he paused. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on Aaliyah. There's someone here today, he said, who has shown incredible strength and courage, someone who decided that enough was enough. Aaliyah's heart skipped a beat. My daughter, Aaliyah, stood up when it would have been easier to stay silent. She faced something that no one should have to face, and she didn't back down. She spoke up, not just for herself, but for others. The room was completely silent. Aaliyah could feel every eye on her, but for the first time, she didn't feel small. She felt proud. I'm proud of her, her father continued, his voice filled with emotion. And I want all of you to remember something very important. You don't need to wait for someone to come and save you. You have the power within yourselves to stand up for what's right. You can speak out against bullying, against racism, against cruelty, and make a real difference. The audience sat in rapt silence, absorbing every word. Aaliyah's eyes misted, but she blinked back the tears. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, but this moment was different. She wasn't being stared at because of her skin, her clothes, or because of what Lily and the other bullies had done to her. She was being seen for her strength, her bravery, and the change she had sparked. Her father finished his speech with a powerful statement. When you see injustice, do not turn away. When you witness cruelty, speak out. Because the world doesn't change when people stay silent. It changes when ordinary people decide to be extraordinary. The room erupted into applause, echoing through the auditorium like thunder. Aaliyah could feel the vibrations in her chest, but it wasn't the applause that filled her with pride. It was the knowledge that she had stood up, not just for herself, but for every kid who had ever been bullied, for every child who had ever felt like they didn't belong. As the students filed out of the auditorium, several stopped to congratulate Aaliyah. Some simply nodded in respect, while others came up to her, offering words of apology and admiration. Maya rushed to her side, beaming with pride. "Aaliyah, that was amazing. You were incredible." Aaliyah smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. "Thanks, Maya. I couldn't have done it without you." As they made their way toward the exit, Aaliyah noticed Lily lingering by the door. Her usual smug expression was gone, replaced with something that looked like uncertainty, or maybe even regret. For a moment, their eyes met, and Lily hesitated. Lily began, her voice small and hesitant, a far cry from the girl who had humiliated Aaliyah in front of the whole school. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize—" Aaliyah held up her hand. "You didn't realize what? That I was human? That your words hurt?" Lily's face turned red. She looked down at the floor. "I didn't think. I was just—" She faltered, searching for an excuse, but there was none. Aaliyah took a deep breath. For a moment, she considered walking away, leaving Lily to stew in her guilt. But then she remembered her father's words about standing up for more than just yourself. "I forgive you," Aaliyah said finally. Lily's head snapped up in surprise. "But forgiveness doesn't mean there aren't consequences. You need to understand that what you did was wrong, and it hurt people. If you really mean what you say, then you need to make it right." Lily nodded slowly, looking humbled. "I will," she whispered. Aaliyah didn't wait for more. She simply turned and walked away, Maya by her side. It wasn't about gaining power over Lily or anyone else. It was about reclaiming her own sense of worth, of knowing that she had done the right thing, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been mistreated. The days following the assembly were different. Aaliyah noticed that people treated her with a newfound respect. The students who once ignored her now smiled and greeted her in the hallways. The whispers that used to follow her were replaced with nods of recognition. But what mattered most was the change in herself. Aaliyah felt lighter, as if the weight of years of silent suffering had been lifted. She was no longer the quiet girl who let the world pass her by. She had a voice, and she wasn't afraid to use it. As Aaliyah and Maya walked through the school courtyard after class, Maya turned to her with a grin. "So, what's next for you, Ms. Civil Rights?" Aaliyah laughed, a real, genuine laugh. "I don't know, but whatever it is, I won't be afraid to speak up." As they headed toward the school gates, Aaliyah looked back one last time. The place that had once felt like a battlefield now felt like a space she had conquered. It wasn't that the bullies had disappeared or that injustice would magically go away, but Aaliyah had learned something more powerful than all of that. She had control over her own story, and that was a lesson she would carry with her for the rest of her life. A few months later, the school held another assembly. This time, it wasn't just about bullying. It was about inclusion, empathy, and the strength to stand up for one another. The administration had taken Aaliyah's story to heart, and with her father's help, they created a program that encouraged students to speak out against injustice in all its forms. Lily, who had once been the school's biggest bully, was now one of the program's most active participants. She spent her time helping other students understand the importance of kindness and empathy. Though she had a long way to go in earning back everyone's trust, she was trying. And Aaliyah? She became the face of that change, not because she wanted the spotlight, but because she knew that her story had the power to inspire others. She had learned that sometimes standing up for yourself wasn't just about you. It was about creating a ripple effect that could change the lives of others. And that, in the end, was what truly blew everyone away. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an amber glow over Maplewood High School's track. It was a typical afternoon, where the sounds of sneakers pounding the pavement mingled with the sharp shouts of encouragement from teammates. This was a sacred space for many, a sanctuary where dreams of athletic glory were nurtured. Among them was Jamal, a young black athlete whose talent had begun to shine brighter than anyone had anticipated. But there was a storm brewing beneath the surface. Coach Thompson, the head coach of the track and field team, paced along the sidelines like a caged lion, his brow furrowed in concentration. He was a man of few words, and those words often cut like a knife. He had a reputation for being tough, but his discipline often crossed the line into humiliation, especially towards Jamal. The irony was thick. Here was a coach who had once been an athlete himself, yet the world had soured him, twisting his pride into prejudice. As Jamal prepared for another day of practice, he couldn't shake the feeling that Coach Thompson was watching him with a critical eye, looking for any chance to pounce. Jamal was more than just a gifted runner. He was the kind of kid who stayed late after school to practice, perfecting his stride and building his endurance. He had dreams bigger than the track, aspirations that soared as high as the Olympic podium. But his path was strewn with obstacles, both on and off the field. Coach Thompson had once been a celebrated sprinter, a local hero in his youth. Yet now, bitterness clouded his judgment, and his skewed view of the world made him dismissive of athletes he deemed unworthy. He often directed his ire towards Jamal, whose talent he begrudged. "Speed means nothing if you don't have the heart," Coach Thompson would often bark, staring Jamal down as if trying to strip him of his spirit. Jamal would nod silently, letting the words wash over him, but deep down, the hurt lingered. At home, Jamal found solace in his mother, Linda, a single parent who worked 2 jobs to support her son's dreams. She was his greatest advocate, instilling in him the values of hard work and resilience. Every evening after long hours at the diner, she would sit with him, listening to his stories and fueling his ambitions. "You're destined for greatness, Jamal," she would say, her eyes gleaming with pride. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." It was during a pivotal practice session that the boiling tensions finally erupted. The team gathered on the track, eager to demonstrate their progress. Jamal was particularly enthusiastic, eager to show the results of his relentless training. He could feel the energy buzzing around him, and as he lined up with his teammates, he was ready to race. But the moment he took off, Coach Thompson's harsh voice cut through the air. "Look at him, running like a wild animal," he sneered as Jamal flew past his teammates. "No discipline, no finesse. You think this is a game?" Jamal's heart sank. He had felt the stares of his teammates, the awkward silence that followed Coach Thompson's words. It was a familiar sting, the kind that came with being a black athlete in a world that often saw him as less than. "Keep your head up, Jamal," one teammate whispered, but Jamal was already lost in the chaos of his own thoughts. How could he prove himself when the man who was supposed to lead him forward was determined to hold him back? The practice continued, but the air was thick with tension. Coach Thompson continued to berate Jamal, each insult layered with venom. Jamal felt his confidence slipping, but he channeled that pain into his running, pushing himself harder than ever. With each lap, he focused on the finish line, imagining the thrill of crossing it first. The next few weeks were a blur of grueling practices and emotional turmoil. Jamal trained harder than he ever had, determined to turn the pain of Coach Thompson's words into fuel for his ambition. He ran early in the morning, sprinted on the weekends, and even joined local running clubs to improve his skills. His teammates began to notice the shift in Jamal. Instead of being defeated, he became a beacon of hope and determination. They rallied behind him, whispering words of encouragement during practice, even challenging the coach's harshness in subtle ways. One afternoon, while they rested between drills, one of his teammates, Michael, turned to Jamal. "You're faster than anyone here, man. Just wait until the championship. Thompson doesn't know what he's talking about." "Thanks, Mike," Jamal replied, forcing a smile. "I just need to keep my head down and keep running." But it wasn't just his teammates who noticed. News of Jamal's impressive times began to spread beyond the school walls. Local newspapers picked up on his achievements, and soon scouts began to take an interest. Jamal's dream of becoming an Olympic athlete seemed to inch closer with every practice. However, Coach Thompson remained skeptical. He continued to dismiss Jamal's achievements, often comparing him unfavorably to his previous star athletes. "You're not built for this," he'd say. "You think you can make it to the Olympics? You're just another wannabe." Each comment felt like a dagger to Jamal's heart, but he clung to his mother's words. He envisioned her standing at the finish line, cheering him on. The thought became his anchor, grounding him as he faced the coach's relentless negativity. The day of the regional track championship arrived, bright and clear. The atmosphere was electric with excitement as athletes from all over gathered to compete. Jamal stood at the starting line, his heart pounding in his chest. The roar of the crowd was deafening, but all he could hear were the echoes of Coach Thompson's voice. "Show them what you're made of, Jamal," he whispered to himself, envisioning his mother's smile, the pride in her eyes. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him as he took a deep breath, preparing for the race of his life. As the starting gun fired, Jamal surged forward, his feet flying over the track. The rhythm of his breathing matched the pounding of his heart, and with each stride, he felt a surge of power. He was running not just for himself, but for every time someone had doubted him. Midway through the race, he could feel his competitors gaining on him, but instead of faltering, he dug deeper. The finish line loomed ahead, and in that moment, Jamal remembered the many times he had pushed through pain, the countless mornings he had woken up early to train. He crossed the finish line first, breaking the school record. The crowd erupted into cheers, and his teammates surrounded him, lifting him into the air. Jamal was overwhelmed with emotion as he basked in the thrill of victory. But Coach Thompson's reaction was muted. He stood at the sidelines, arms crossed, a scowl etched onto his face. The dissonance between the celebration and the coach's disdain was palpable. Jamal looked over, expecting a nod of acknowledgement or even a reluctant praise, but all he saw was the man who had tried to tear him down. After the race, Jamal was approached by a former Olympic athlete who had come to watch. "Congratulations, young man. I heard a lot about you. You have real talent," he said, clapping Jamal on the back. As the former Olympian walked away, Jamal caught sight of Coach Thompson. "You think you can just come in here and take credit?" Thompson sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. Jamal, fueled by the day's events, turned to face him. "I didn't take anything, Coach. I earned this. Maybe you should start believing in your athletes instead of tearing them down." The words hung in the air, a challenge that caught even the coach off guard. For the first time, he saw the strength in Jamal's eyes, the determination that had fueled his journey. News of Jamal's victory spread like wildfire. Local news stations wanted interviews, and college scouts lined up to see him in action. He was suddenly the star of Maplewood High, and the once doubtful whispers transformed into cheers of support. As the weeks went on, Jamal continued to train harder, preparing for the state championship. He surrounded himself with teammates who believed in him and distanced himself from the negativity that had once overshadowed his ambition. Meanwhile, Coach Thompson began to reflect on his behavior. The look of pride on Jamal's face, the respect he earned from his teammates, and the encouragement from the former Olympic athlete struck a chord deep within him. Perhaps his methods needed to change. Perhaps he needed to be more than just a coach who yelled. He approached Jamal one day after practice, a tentative expression on his face. "I've been hard on you," he admitted, his voice softer. "Maybe too hard. I see your potential now, Jamal. I want to help you reach it." Jamal was taken aback, his guard up, but he saw something in the coach's eyes, a flicker of respect that had been absent before. "Thank you, Coach," he said cautiously. "I appreciate it." As the state championship approached, Jamal stood on the starting line, his heart filled with hope. The challenges he had faced had only made him stronger. He glanced around at the crowd, at his teammates who had rallied behind him, and at his mother, Linda, standing proudly in the stands, her face beaming with encouragement. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation. The sounds of laughter, cheers, and the rhythmic clapping of supportive fans created a symphony of encouragement that resonated deep within him. Jamal took a deep breath, feeling the familiar weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. The starter raised the gun, and Jamal's pulse quickened. He remembered every hour spent training, every moment of doubt he had pushed through, and every time he had been underestimated. This race was more than just a competition. It was a culmination of all his struggles, his dreams, and his determination. The gun went off, and he launched into the race, his legs moving as if they had a mind of their own. He felt the adrenaline coursing through his veins as he raced ahead, every stride echoing the lessons he had learned along the way. The cheers of the crowd faded into the background. All that mattered was the rhythm of his breath and the sound of his feet hitting the track. As he approached the final stretch, the finish line came into view, but he was not alone. Two competitors flanked him, and the finish line loomed ahead like a beacon of hope. Jamal could feel their presence, the pressure building, but instead of faltering, he pushed himself harder. He remembered Coach Thompson's words from the past few weeks, the encouragement, the support, and it spurred him on. "Run, Jamal, you've got this." He heard Linda's voice, clear and unwavering, cutting through the noise. With every ounce of strength he had left, he surged forward, pouring everything he had into those final moments. He crossed the finish line, and the world around him exploded in cheers. For a heartbeat, he stood there, breathless and in disbelief, before the realization of victory washed over him like a wave. He had done it. He had become the state champion. Jamal turned to find his teammates rushing towards him, enveloping him in a sea of congratulations. Laughter and shouts filled the air, and for a moment, all the hardships, the doubts, and the criticisms melted away into pure joy. Coach Thompson approached, a rare smile breaking through his usually stern demeanor. "You've shown incredible heart out there, Jamal. I'm proud of you. I see now that you're not just an athlete. You're a champion." Jamal's chest swelled with pride, but it was not just the trophy in his hand that mattered. It was the recognition, the respect, and the understanding that he had earned through hard work. He looked at Coach Thompson and nodded, the animosity that had once existed between them fading into a newfound camaraderie. "Thank you, Coach. I appreciate it," Jamal replied, his voice steady. As the celebration continued, Jamal spotted his mother in the stands, tears glistening in her eyes. He ran over, enveloping her in a warm embrace. "We did it, Mom. I did it," he exclaimed, the joy bubbling over. "You did it, baby. I always knew you could," she cried, pulling back to look him in the eye. "This is just the beginning. The Olympics are waiting for you." In the weeks that followed, Jamal's life transformed. He received invitations to prestigious running camps, and scouts from top colleges expressed interest in his talent. Each step of the journey brought him closer to his Olympic dreams, and he was determined to seize every opportunity. Coach Thompson became an ally, changing his coaching style to better support his athletes. He focused on building their strengths and cultivating their talents, using Jamal as an example of what true dedication could achieve. The dynamic between them shifted, and Jamal found himself motivated not just by his own dreams, but by a desire to lift others as well. The Maplewood track team became a force to be reckoned with, and Jamal often took on a mentorship role for younger athletes. He shared his story with them, emphasizing the importance of perseverance, hard work, and the need to rise above adversity. One afternoon, during a practice session, Jamal gathered the team. "Listen up, everyone," he called, capturing their attention. "I want you all to know that no matter what anyone says, you have the power to define your future. Don't let anyone tell you what you can or can't do." The words resonated, igniting a spark in the hearts of his teammates. They ran with renewed determination, each stride echoing Jamal's passion. Years later, as Jamal stood at the Olympic trials, ready to take the next step toward his ultimate dream, he reflected on how far he had come. The memories of Coach Thompson's harsh words had faded, replaced by the strength he had gained through overcoming them. As he lined up at the starting blocks, he closed his eyes, envisioning the journey that had led him here, the struggles, the triumphs, and the support of those who believed in him. He opened his eyes, focused on the track ahead, and took a deep breath. The starter's gun fired and he launched forward, propelled by the dreams of his past and the promise of his future. The race was on, and Jamal was ready to claim his place among the champions.